Timing perhaps couldn't have been better in light of political developments in Westminster. Just over a week ago, Dame Andrea Leadsom's memoirs came out as a new book. It's called Snakes and Ladders. She's been telling about life not only as a sitting MP for South Northamptonshire, but also a cabinet minister and an aspiring leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister, not once, but twice. Certain individuals in the book get the brickbats thrown at them, amongst them former Prime Minister David Cameron, fellow Cabinet Minister Michael Gove, our government advisor Dominic Cummings, and the former Speaker of the House of Commons and former Buckinghamshire MP John Bercow. So I asked her, are they her snakes?
Well, Snakes and Ladders, the title is actually because I think a lot of people feel politics is chess, where there's some sort of Machiavellian moving of pieces on a board. And really my assertion is it's more like Snakes and Ladders, where you roll the dice and you see where they land, and one minute you're up, the next minute you're down, either from a mighty place near the top or indeed, right from the bottom of the board. So I'm not accusing anyone of being a snake, and it's hard to accuse anyone of being a ladder. But I'm simply observing that that there is a lot of being in the right place at the right time. And certainly for my money, I would like to see many more people who have a real sort of good heart and decent ethics going into politics.
Andrew, you know what it's like to throw your cap into the ring for leadership more than once. You write extensively about that, and you write from the heart. There's real passion in what you say. You also confess to perhaps some political naivety over how the media treated you. Were you unprepared for the first leadership, and would you otherwise have done better in the second leadership race?
Well, definitely I was unprepared the first time around. And as I say in the book, I was not expecting David Cameron to resign. Now, people say surely he had no choice. And in hindsight, yes, I can see that he had no choice. But at the time, he very, very strongly said whatever the decision of the people, he would stick by it and lead us through whatever the decision was. And so I believed him. And so, yeah, I mean, literally, I woke up the day after the referendum to hear he'd resigned. And over the next few days came under quite a lot of encouragement to stand myself. I decided I was going to back Boris. Famously, that imploded, and then Boris imploded. And I found myself with my own hat in the ring and coming second to Theresa May. But the reality there was that she carried almost 200 of the Conservative MPs at the time to my 84. And there was no doubt Conservative MPs wanted her massively. I was worried for the country that if I continued to put my name forward, it'd be 9 weeks before we had a prime minister, and we couldn't afford that turmoil. So I stood aside for Theresa. And the fact is, a lot of people were still angry because I'd withdrawn in 2016. A number of people were very angry because I'd stayed in Theresa May's cabinet trying to get Brexit done. So, again, I was sort of slightly between a rock and a hard place. So my campaign was very prepared for 2019, but it didn't really get off the ground. I can't really draw any conclusions.
Theresa May held the day. Would you have made a better Prime Minister?
It's really hard to say. And, people are always offering me their opinions. I actually think history will be kind to Theresa. She very thoroughly organised a withdrawal agreement that, for example, ensured that Gibraltar would be a safe part of the whole United Kingdom and Crown dependencies without some of the problems that were foreseen. She ensured that lots of things that people were very frightened about did not come to pass. So I think actually Theresa May did a good job. Obviously, what she didn't manage to achieve because of the hung parliament was actually leaving the EU. And that became very, very full of turmoil and anger and upset in Parliament, which spilled out very much into the country. But I do think, she was determined to support people who were just about managing. She brought in some very good reviews. And so I think she's got a lot to be proud of. So I wouldn't say I would have made a better Prime Minister. Plenty of people think that we would have got Brexit done faster, and that would have been my plan. But as I say, you do not have a crystal ball. And there is a world in which if I'd become Prime Minister, I could have been no confidence on my second day in office by my parliamentary colleagues, and then we could have been facing a new leadership election, and that would have been a disaster for the country. That was what I was keen to avoid. So in a way, if I had my time again, I would make the same decision again, because that was what was in the national interest at the time.
Dame Andrea Leadsom, whose new book, Snakes and Ladders, has come out. With the nation looking on as the Conservative Party goes through the process again of looking for a leader and Prime Minister, I asked Andrea Leadsom the same question, which raised more than a few eyebrows in the first of the televised leadership debates a couple of weeks ago. So, is Boris Johnson an honest man?
I think he is an honest man. And I think he doesn't hold the same precise, values as some people. So some people just think, Boris, what a lad, he's just, man of the people, talks human, blah, blah, blah. Other people think that he doesn't have a clear right and wrong. And so that doesn't make him dishonest, but it does mean that there are a lot of people in South Northamptonshire who have a real problem with his his interpretation of ethics. I mean, I'll just give you a reason, why I'm a fan of Boris, and that is because when it came to the early years project, he told me when he sacked me, I said to him, "Can I take forward the early years project?" "Yes, you can," he said. And then a few weeks later, nothing had happened. I was doing a speech in the House, what's known as a resignation speech, in my case, a sacking speech. And I called the Chief Whip and said, look, if Boris isn't going to do anything about this early years that he promised me, then I'm just going to raise it in my speech. Anyway, next thing, within an hour or two, I was told that Boris had jumped up and down at the morning meeting in number 10 and said, "I promised her, you've got to get this done." And Boris himself let it be known that no one was to touch the Start for Life money, which is the money that he promised to my project. In my view, that shows, that is really following through. And I think that's incredibly honourable.
You talk about if I could have my time again. Let nobody forget that you are still a sitting MP. You are still representing the constituents of South Northamptonshire. And if we look at politics right now, you managed Penny Mordaunt's run for the leadership, which has now come to an end. Where next for you? Who do you support going into the final runoff between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, as we will see with the Conservative Party in September of this year?
I am still thinking very carefully about it and looking at what approach both Rishi and Liz would take. We had a very significant package of growing the economy as a means to ensure that debt would reduce over time and that we would improve productivity and we would achieve opportunities right across the UK. So what I'm looking for is which candidate is going to deliver most closely in line with that view. And that's really where I'm at.
Given your background in finance, it's been speculated about that you could have become Chancellor to Penny Mordaunt if Penny Mordaunt had become Prime Minister. Would you become Chancellor to a former Chancellor if Rishi Sunak wins?
I never talk about or speculate on or even spend time wondering on future jobs in government. I would absolutely be delighted to be in government. And as I've said in my book, it was always my ambition to be the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer, coming from 25 years in finance. So if I'm asked to be in government, I'll be delighted. And if I'm not, then I will also carry on with what I see as incredibly important work.
At the risk of painting you to be the next Frank Sinatra, what is this book to you? Because surely most politicians only write their memoirs, their heavy tomes, after their time in office has come to an end and they're getting ready for the book tour.
Yeah, so a few people did say, if you're writing a book, does that mean you're leaving politics? And the answer is absolutely not. And in fact, I was talking to a book reviewer who said to me, it's a really interesting book, loved reading it, but it hasn't got an ending. And I was like, yeah, that's the point. The reason for writing it was in lockdown, we were so flat out. I was so flat out helping constituents. I was at home answering up to 500 emails a day from people whose mum couldn't get any food, who needed to, what can I do because my boiler's just blown up? I've got a small business, how am I going to pay the rates? I was working all hours with my parliamentary team to try and get those answers for people. And I really felt I needed something for me. So it was a great opportunity to just be thinking about the last extraordinary years. You know, I'd just been sacked from the cabinet. So it was a good time to write it. So it took me 2 years to write. And it certainly wasn't the end of something. It was more the end of a particular period of time.
That is the current MP, the continuing MP for South Northamptonshire.